In this video, we're going to consider a couple of Python loops. We have a for loop and a while loop. First, let's consider the for, F-O-R loop. With a for loop, we can do something for as long as we have a value in a list variable. Remember the list variable? We had those straight brackets with values inside separated by commas. We saw that in a previous video. Let's say, for example, we had a variable of inventory, and that equals, in straight brackets, and these are strings, so I'll use quotes, we have a Catalyst 2960, close quote, comma separator. In quotes, I've got a Catalyst 3750, close quote, comma. I've also got, we'll say, a 2911 router, close quote, and a comma. And let's say we've got a Cisco 7965G IP phone, close quote, comma. Let's do one more. Let's say that we've got a Cisco Unified Communications Manager server, close quote, and let's close our brackets. We've now populated this value of inventory, and we can see the items one at a time using a for loop, because we're going to do a for loop for as long as we have a value in that list variable. The first time through the loop, we're going to be looking at the first value, which is a Catalyst 2960. The next time we go through the loop, we'll be looking at a Catalyst 3750. Let me show you. I can say for item, by the way, item is just a variable name that I'm using. I'm saying for item in inventory, and we use a colon like we did with the if statement. And this says we're going to be going through this list variable named inventory. And the first time through, we're going to assign that first value of Catalyst 2960. We're going to assign that to the variable called item. And then we're going to print it. We'll say print, and we'll say item. Let's press enter a couple of times. And we looped through inventory for each of those values, and we printed them each time. And once we ran out of values, we exited the loop. In fact, while we're looping through that, we might want to combine that logic with the if logic we saw in a previous video. Here's what I mean. I can say for item in inventory, like we did before, colon, instead of just printing out whatever that is, I'm going to say if it contains Catalyst, then print it out. If I just want to see what's in Catalyst, I'll say if, and in quotes, Catalyst, close quote, if that string is in whatever the item value is now, and we'll do a colon, then I want to print it. I'll say print, in parentheses, item. And it prints just those items, or those values in our list variable containing the word Catalyst. In fact, we could use this to populate another variable. We could populate a list variable that just contained our Catalyst switches. For example, I could say I've got a new variable called Catalyst switch, and it equals right now, it's going to be a list variable. It's empty right now, so I'm just going to give an open and close brackets, and we'll press enter. And then we'll go through this for loop again. I'll say for item in inventory, just like we did before, and I'm going to say if the current item contains the word Catalyst, just like we did before, if that's contained in the current value of item, instead of just printing it, here's what I want to do. I want to append to the Catalyst switch variable that I created, that list. I'll say Catalyst switch dot append whatever that item value is. And we'll press enter a couple of times. And let's see what we now have in this list named Catalyst switch. I'll just say Catalyst switch. And notice we have in brackets, separated by commas, these strings of Catalyst 2960 and 3750. We were able to populate a list variable by saying, if the current item in inventory has Catalyst in it, let's put that as a value in this other list. That's a look at the for loop, and again, that does something for as long as we have a value in a list variable. Next, let's take a look at a while loop, which is going to loop while a condition is true. And let's do this with a program. I've already got a program started over here in the left-hand pane, and I've called it loops.py. And I'm going to say that X equals something that the user is going to give me. I'm going to ask the user to give me a number, an integer to which they wish to count. And I'm going to say input, we saw that in a previous video, and in quotes I'm going to say enter the number to which you wish to count, colon, space, close quote, close parentheses. Now, here's the challenge, and we saw this in a previous video. When we ask the user for input like this, if they type in a number, even though it's a number and it's an integer, it's going to be seen as a string. We need to convert it to an actual integer for our purposes. Remember how we convert data types? If I want to convert something into an integer, I'm going to use the int function. So I'm going to say that my value of x equals the int with x in parentheses, which means whatever that string was of x originally, I'm going to make that value an integer. And now we're going to start counting beginning at 1. And let's create a counting variable. Let's use y, and we're going to start at 1, so I'll say y equals 1. And remember, the while loop is going to loop while a condition is true. So let's specify that condition. I'm going to say while y is less than or equal to x, and we have to end this with a colon like the if statement we saw earlier. While that's true, then let's print the value of y. But if we just left it at this, what would happen? It would always be true. Y would just equal 1 forever, and we would just keep printing 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So what we want to do is every time we loop through this, we want to increment this counting variable of y. We want to increment it by 1. How do I make y 1 more than it currently is? I'm going to say that y equals y plus 1. And let's save that. Let's run that. It asks for a number to which I wish to count. I'll say 7, and notice it counts all the way to 7, and it stops. Let's follow the logic. When I entered 7, that number 7 was a string. I converted it to an integer by saying x equals int with x in parentheses. So now x equals the integer of 7. And I started counting with a value of 1. We had y equals 1. And I said, while y is less than or equal to x, then I want to print the value of y. Well, initially, y equals 1. We just set it to 1. And I'm going to print 1. But then I say y equals y plus 1. Well, y is currently 1, so y equals 1 plus 1. Now y equals 2. And since that condition was true before, we go through the while loop again. And I'm going to say, while this time 2 is less than or equal to x, then I'll print the current value of y. And x is what we typed in. That was a 7 in our case. So yeah, 2 is less than or equal to 7. After we get all the way up to 7, and we say y equals y plus 1, then suddenly y equals 8. And when we evaluate that while statement the next time, is 8 less than or equal to 7? No, it's not. So we don't execute what's in the while loop. Let's take a look at a variant of this. Let me show you how we can break out of a loop if we want to. We'll still leave the first few lines as they are, but let's set a while condition that's always going to be true. In fact, I'll use the Boolean value type of true, which is always true. And if this condition is true, and it's always going to be true, then I'm going to print the value of y. I'll continue to increment the value of y by 1 each time, but I can do my evaluation here. I can say, if the value of y is now greater than x, then I want to stop counting. And I'll do a colon because this is an if statement, and my response to this condition of y being greater than x is to break out of this loop using the break command. So you see what's happening here? The first time through, y equals 1. I'll enter 10, for example, as our integer value. And y is going to be 1. Then we're going to increment it. It's going to be 2. And we keep evaluating each time. Is y greater than x? Well, y is not going to be greater than x until we say that y is 10. And we print 10. Then when we say y equals y plus 1, it becomes 11. When we run that evaluation, that if statement, when y equals 11, we're going to break out. So it's not going to print 11. It will break out before we loop back and print it out. So let's save and run this. Let's do a save. And let's run it. And I'll say we want to count to 10. and it counts all the way to 10, and it stops. That's a way that we can break out of a while loop that is always true. And in this video, just to sum up, we've taken a look at a couple of ways that we could loop through some logic that might be printing something out. We might be prepending something to a variable. Lots of things we can do while we're looping. We saw how to count, how to increment a variable by 1 each time. And we had 2 types of loops that we talked about in this video. We had a for loop, which would loop for as long as there is a value in a list variable. And we took a look at a while loop, which would loop while a particular condition was true.